The Chaser Report is recorded on Gadigal land.
Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is the Chaser Report.
Hello and welcome to the Chaser Report with Dom and Charles.
Now, Charles, we don't talk enough about refugees on this podcast. It's been a topic that's stuck in the maw of many for decades now, Australia's approach to asylum seekers in general. But what wonderful news we've had lately, eh?
Oh, we've had some great news on the refugee front. We're going to devote an entire episode to talking about refugees, which I'm sure will bring delight and happiness to so many people.
No complaints at all to podcast at chaser.com.au and no one-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. That's what we like to see. Well, there's two stories, aren't there, Charles? Because I've got an inspiring story of a big, powerful neighbour, Australia, reaching out a helping hand to a country that's doing it tough, Tuvalu.
Well, should we start with the good news or the bad news?
What's your news?
Well, I've got the fact that the Australian government has been forced to release 83 refugees from detention, from indefinite detention.
Oh, that's the High Court meddling, isn't it?
Yeah, the High Court has just meddled, but it's a complete disaster, Dom. Like, Australia had a plan. We had a good plan, which was to just lock them up forever and not work out what to do with them. And the High Court said you can't do that.
Yes, indefinite detention apparently is unconstitutional. Let's find out more about the monsters that are terrifying our streets and the good news tale of Australia being kind to its neighbours after this. So, Charles, can I just clarify? We're not in the same place for this one. Have I somehow connected to the Ben Fordham show? What's going on?
Oh, no. You got to understand, Dom. Like, this is one of those things where you go, oh, right, okay, the High Court has come down in favour of human rights. And then you look at the detail. The details are hilarious. Like, you just go, oh, right, okay, maybe I'm in favour of human rights. I've always, identified as somebody who is in favour of human rights. But, it just makes it that extra little bit tricky.
Because I remember, Charles, back in my legal studies a long time ago, and I can't even remember the Latin terms for it anymore, perhaps habeas corpus, I'm not sure. There was a notion that when the state locked you up, there was supposed to be for a particular period of time that was defined and following due process in a court of law. That was, like, if the state's going to lock you up, there's supposed to be a pretty robust basis for doing that. Not just, chuck them in prison indefinitely.
Absolutely.
That was the theory.
Yeah, and that dates back all the way to the Magna Carta, I think. Like, that's a fairly, millennia-long principle of...
making this the first time that Magna Carta has ever been relevant. So there you go, Cookers. We'll give you this one. The Magna Carta does relate to this.
But the thing is, over the last 10 years or so, there was a government in power who just went, you know what, I reckon those people should just stay locked up.
Yeah.
And so there was no judicial process at all. It was nothing to do with the courts. It was the government themselves, the executive arm of the government, like the people who run the government just went, I don't know what to do with them. These are refugees. They've come in. We can't possibly return them to their country because, in many cases it was things like they will definitely be killed by their governments, right?
And so a humanitarian detention, in other words. Much nicer to lock them up forever.
But we don't want to release them onto the streets, partly because they don't have a visa. Like, there's no appropriate visa to give them. So we'll just, sucks to be them, right? So that was the policy. And the High Court, just a few days ago, ruled, no, you're not allowed to do that. These people have to go free, right? So here's where the whole, maybe actually Ben Fordham does have a point, comes in, which is there was an actual reason why some of these people were being locked up. Let's just read ABC News in America. The way they reported this story was 3 murderers freed in Australia after court ruled out holding migrants indefinitely, Minister said.
But Charles, you know what these right-wing news sources are like. They call everyone murderers, don't they, who aren't really. Like, this person's probably just some sort of innocent activist, are they?
Yeah, one of them is Sarul Azhar Umar, a former police officer. Do you think that they...
we want people like that. Yeah, we want police officers.
Who was sentenced...
Don't we?
Yeah. Well, this guy was sentenced by a Malaysian court in 2015. So there was a judicial process about him. He was sentenced to be hanged over the death of a Mongolian woman whose body was dismembered with military-grade explosives. And I think the allegation there, certainly the opposition has said, this guy is an assassin. He's literally an assassin who is now free to roam the streets of Melbourne. So...
yeah, look, The Guardian's reporting this guy as hitman. man
Yeah.
as a hitman. And look, I think that's tough, Charles. That's really worrying, not just obviously to the people he may murder, but also because this really threatens the jobs of Australian hitmen and women.
Yes.
And because there's nothing saying it's men only these days.
No.
Anyone can be a hit
Hitman.
person.
They're taking
Can
our
we
jobs.
just call them hit people?
Yeah.
This guy is going to undercut, honest Aussie hit people who pay their taxes in this country.
Yes, that's right. And there'll be a race to the bottom, won't there? So suddenly, instead of 10 grand a hit, it'll be 5 grand. And there'll be it'll be like Uber Eats type gig economy hits. And
door death. People who use the door death app.
Yeah.
And Charles, there have been days, some of them spent working with you, frankly, where I would have offered people for $50.
Well,
I would have been happy.
Well, this is why it's not a good idea to reduce the price of assassinations too low. You want to maintain a bit of a floor so that there's a barrier to entry.
It's just classic economic theory, isn't it?
So
this is one guy. But Charles, surely you're talking about just one. There's one rotten apple in every barrel. And admittedly, amongst 80 people, one of them being a convicted hitman, it's not good. But sure, the other 79 are innocent, aren't they?
Well, there is it's a bit icky, but quite a lot of rapists, it would seem, as well. Yeah. So the other 2 murderers that we don't have the details on yet.
Okay, so there's 3 murderers amongst the 80. Yeah, the odds are
Yeah.
looking worse.
Lots of people convicted of assault and sexual assault and
look, some of the details I don't even want to go into because they're just horrible,
some of them are absolutely awful. One of the murderers, actually, I know one of the sort of people identified did some heinous crimes, but came from Myanmar, so couldn't go back there because obviously he was part of the sort of Rohingya minority.
From the Rohingya.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is part of the issue, Charles, is that Australia is well known, and this is one of the few things I think we can be truly proud of Australia on the international stage. We're very anti-death penalty. But that means that if there's someone who was convicted overseas of an offence that involves the death penalty, for instance, murder, we're placed in a bind, aren't we? Because we can't send the murderer off to be murdered themselves by the state.
No.
But then it doesn't necessarily mean, and again, this is a bit of weird territory feeling like Ben Fordham here. We don't necessarily want this bloke in the Australian market.
Yes, but we probably do want him to have a sort of fair judicial process because what if you ever found yourself accused of being a hitman unfairly, but you were never given the chance in court to prove otherwise?
Or is it the case that he did get the trial and he was, and I don't know, but he was convicted of the sentence in Malaysia, which is death penalty. This is the problem. Deporting people to death penalty countries is something we don't like to do.
No, exactly. No,
so
but
that's tough.
He was tried in absentia, though. Like, he fled.
Oh, I see.
So it's not necessarily the same judicial standards that we...
Okay, so let's not go down too far into the weeds of this guy.
But
or he might shoot us.
Well, he is free in Australia. This is the thing. So I think we need a solution to this problem. And luckily, Australia is very good at coming up with absolutely brutal, horrible ways of dealing with immigration problems, right? So what and also world leader, we don't have to sort of, adhere to international norms as such, right? We've got to adhere to the High Court. But what I'm thinking, hear me out, Dom, is bring back the barges.
The barges?
Now, you remember the whole reason White Australia was founded was because they had all those barges on the Thames that kept on filling up with convicts because America got independent. They used to ship all their convicts. This is the British used to shit up
to America.
America declared independence, and so they just got stuck on barges. Now the barges are back in Bristol and places like that. Like they've actually started putting refugees and people onto barges back in the UK again. Why not do the same thing here? And what I'm thinking is we fill up a barge full of unpleasant refugees who we don't necessarily want here, and we send them to England.
Oh, that's a very good idea.
You know the Uno reverse card trend on TikTok?
Yeah.
Where everyone carries around...
Flip it around.
Flip it around and go... And England won't be able to deal with it because it's like, that's the rules of Uno.
That's the rules of Uno. And also they started it. They did it first to us.
Exactly. They can't say, we disagree with transportation. Well, you did it! You're the ones who invented it.
We also play the irony card, don't we? And Charles, I don't know though. I mean, I don't want these people to be, no matter what they've done, we've got to be a decent citizen.
Yeah,
of the world.
that's true. Okay,
we can't ship them back on barges. I know the perfect way to ship them back.
P&O Cruises.
The Ruby Princess. The Ruby Princess is just the way to get them back. There's a new COVID wave.
There's a new COVID wave. Yes.
They may not all make it. The problem may just take care of itself. But gosh, they'd die in luxury, wouldn't they?
Yes.
Such
exactly.
luxury.
Yes. No.
It's a princess.
I love it. And also that means that presumably we won't have here in Sydney a whole lot of people arriving on the Ruby Princess with the new COVID wave to infect us. Because we've got they're
very good idea.
Off doing another job. I think that's a great idea. I mean, the other thing that we could do is treat them with some sort of compassion and actually work out a judicial system that actually provides the level of oversight that the High Court is asking for. Like, we could actually engage properly with the issue. Do you think that...
And it is worth noting, I'm reading more about these crimes as we speak, and some of them are quite heinous.
Yeah. Because I think the whole thing is these people have stacked up after the last 10 years. And it's so funny hearing the opposition go, well, the government's got to do something about it. It's like, this is a problem directly created by the previous government.
No,
right?
that's not the way it works, because the reverse card was played there again.
That's right, exactly.
You see?
Yeah.
And when the government became the opposition, they didn't have to, there's no takesies, backsies. Yeah. It's all the government's fault.
Yeah, so, but the point is that what the High Court is doing is it's not saying, oh, these are great guys. Let's be neighbours with them. They're going, no, you have to afford them due process, right? So what they're asking the government to do is, well, come up with a process that actually assesses these people and gives them a fair trial and all that sort of stuff. And the government is just going, nah, don't want to.
No, I've seen that they've been saying that the people who have been released into the community have to check in with the police. So they're kind of, it's not as though the police sort of vaguely know where they are. So that should reassure everyone. But, I mean, there is a person here. If we do want just a basic level of security surveillance going on, if we want people to just make sure that these people who've been released in the community aren't going to hurt anyone else, as they have apparently in many cases in the past, all we need to do is just appoint, and this is a man who's looking for a job, Charles.
Yeah.
Appoint Ben Robert-Smith as their parole officer.
Yes.
He checks up on them regularly with the sensitivity for which he's known, highly armed, or near a cliff.
I think he's just got himself a ragtag army of 81 followers who he can sort of do a bit of paramilitary exercises.
This is what the French would do, Charles.
Yes.
They'd put them onto the Foreign Legion.
The Australian Foreign Legion.
Australian Foreign Legion based on some offshore territory where Australian law doesn't. Based in Antarctica, perhaps.
Or Adelaide.
Somewhere where regular law doesn't apply.
And just sort of somewhere we don't really care about.
No, the mean streets of Adelaide, and just BRS's boys.
Yes.
And when the dirty's got to be done, they'll do the dirty. That's good. Well, that's one problem solved, Charles. Be nice to have Ben occupied, and if any of them fell out of line, they wouldn't be able to do it again, what with being dead. All right, Charles, let's move on to the other story. This is the inspiring story, and I promised we'd have an upbeat end to this. We'll get into that after this.
The Chaser Report. Less news, more often.
Now, Charles, it's not often I'm proud of Australia's stance on refugees that I read a headline that just makes me delighted at the humanity shown by the Australian government.
Have you taken a knock to the head recently?
Well, we'll get to that. But the other day, I was just so excited to see Anthony Albanese meeting with the leader of Tuvalu to talk about a new deal, because what's happened, and we know this very well, is that Tuvalu is rapidly disappearing underwater. Quite a lot of it's already gone. So what are they going to do? Well, the great news is that the 11,200 citizens can come to Australia. We're going to throw open our doors and let Tuvalu in. What's 11,000 citizens here? That's such a blip compared to our annual migration intake of hundreds of thousands of people.
Yes.
It's fine. Why not do that?
I think that's a lovely idea. That is the best. So actually, hang on. This does not compute. The government's actually just being nice to our Pacific neighbours.
Yeah. That's right.
Albo
went over.
He appeared.
He went to the Pacific Islands Forum in the Cook Islands.
Yeah.
On the island of Aitutaki, and he gave a speech, and it was just a really nice moment, Charles.
And there's no strings attached. There's no little.
I mean, what is a string? What is a string? I guess the thing to note is that it would be a little bit impractical if they all came at once. You'd have to send a whole bunch of planes and.
What? So they're going to slow down climate change, are they? Is that the idea?
No, Charles, it's fine.
It's
going to come.
Or is it the short people get to go first because they'll be the first to drown?
That would be a good rule.
Yeah.
They're going to come in an orderly fashion that doesn't adversely impact Australia's migration system. So how many do you reckon we can take a year?
Well, if we're taking in a couple of 100,000 a year at the moment, so I reckon
There's 11,000.
There's 11,000. So presumably, I don't know, half this year, half next year, 5,500 each.
How does the number 280 grab you?
What? 280
per year.
So wait a minute.
Yeah.
How long will that'll take like 20 years? No, that'll take how long? That'll take
40 years. It's been calculated. It will take.
Oh, because
So
people
for
will
the
die in the meantime. Yeah.
Well, the final number, the final ones are going to need snorkels, aren't they?
40 years. It will definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
I know Kiribati is already like half under the ocean, and the sea salt is now rising and killing off all the trees. So
Yeah,
Tuvalu's
it's not
not far along. How is this even press release worthy? This is just like
So I've got the New York
piece of
Times here.
Bullshit. This is just
The New York Times is saying by 2050, half the land area of the main island will flood daily.
Yeah.
So they're not going to. I mean, we could get them stilts.
Yeah.
Saline groundwater's a problem as well.
Yeah, no, well, that's the main problem. It's because it's not just like about land. It's about being able to grow anything out of the land. That's why Kiribati is such a disaster because
We haven't done anything for Kiribati yet.
Yeah, why not? They're even further under.
All right. Well, that's one aspect of it, Charles.
Okay.
There's another thing that we got out of it, though.
I bet you a million.
because
Can I guess what it is?
Yep.
Which
take
is
a guess.
their really cool domain name suffix, which is TV. Is that what?
Oh, yeah. That would be a good score.
That would be a good
actually.
trade.
Isn't that one of their major sources of income?
Yeah, that's their main source of income. Yeah, they make like $40 million a year out of .tv.
So here's the good news. The number could increase above 280 in the event that climate change worsens. But no, there's another aspect.
Well,
here. What's the thing?
Well, in fairness, the Labor government is doing all it can to make sure climate change worsens. So, they're really helping out the Tuvaluans' cause there.
That's true. So they may end up coming in the next 3 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Charles, what's the thing Australia wants most from the Pacific Islands?
Good holidays.
Other than cheap fruit pickers.
Cheap fruit pickers, good holidays, and I don't know. Oh yes, rugby union. It's to save the rugby union team, is it?
That would be actually, that'd be great. If we could keep the Tuvalu team as Australia B.
Yes.
And just combine the two. That
Australia
would
A.
be awesome, probably, yes. Yeah. No, Charles, it's security. So in return for the 280 per year,
we get their UN vote.
We don't get their UN. Well, perhaps we do, but no. Security is the.
So they'll come over and be bouncers, like Pacific Islander bouncers.
Be good. No, it's about China, of course.
Oh, so we'll set up a base.
The agreement makes us the main security partner for Tuvalu while it still exists. Okay. And we promise to help them if they've got a disaster or a pandemic or military aggression. So essentially it's become kind of, the term vassal state.
Vassal state is so overused.
It's so overused, isn't it?
It's just neighbourly using of each other's tools. You go and borrow your neighbour's hedge clippers and never return them. And then
if their place is flooded, if your neighbours were flooded,
yes.
Charles, you'd have them at your place, wouldn't you?
Yes, you'd have
one of them.
You'd have
one of the four.
One of the four.
With the next one to come the following year.
And then you'd say, and can we have everything of yours as well?
Yeah, and we basically get to make the most important decisions on your behalf. Yeah, that's it. So that's the deal that's been made. I mean, you've got to say, congratulations to Anthony Albanese, a diplomatic coup.
Yes.
It looked like a humanitarian gesture when you look more closely.
No, it's not.
Not really.
Nah.
280 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's better than nothing.
You know what we should do?
The thing is, Charles,
we should swap the Tuvaluans with the murderers that we've got. We should do swapsies.
That's a brilliant idea. Yeah. We take all of the Tuvaluans in, all 11,000.
And then the Ben Roberts-Smith can protect the Tuvalu.
They can be the Tuvalu army.
Yeah. We've solved everything.
They could just stay there as the sea levels gradually rise.
And Ben Roberts-Smith is tall. He'll survive his whole life.
He's very tall. We could put cameras on there as it gradually descends into Lord of the Flies.
I love it. SAS Tuvalu.
That's what we do here, Charles. We solve problems. Another one ticked off. Our gear is from Road. We're part of the Iconoclast Network. And on behalf of Australia, thanks to you, Charles, for solving those problems.
That's right. All solved. Tick. Done. Add that to the CV.
Next time.